Eric, I want to talk to you about, we have to bring the guy up because he just provides so much comical content. And so it's like Dave every week is, giving us something, right? Well, this new thing.
Talk about the gift that keeps on giving.
It is really. So even all their contributors, like that whole community, their contributors contributing content for just the podcast to make fun of. But why it's like, everybody's kind of obvious to see, like any wrestling fan can see the only metric that AEW has been performing well in over the past year or two is in Dave's star ratings for the matches. Everything else is down, and it's funny because it used to be when we would look at ratings, okay, it used to be we'd look at total viewership because there was a market share. When we were going head to head with WWE, you're fighting for the fans to view your product, which leads to, marketing, merchandise sales, and people attending live, tickets to live shows, right? Well, AEW's been down in that consistently for a while. And Dave keeps pointing to this, the TV rights deal and keeps talking about how, they're number one on cable this week. They're number two on cable. It's like, dude, if you're not in professional wrestling, this industry that we've known for years and the model that Dave knows well, because he's been studying it and writing about it for 40 years or whatever, he knows that if you're not drawing enough fans at television, you're not going to be able to fill the seats at your shows. Everybody knows this, and that's the problem that they're having. He keeps talking about, the ratings are good enough because they're beating these other shows on cable. And to me, I equate that as 3 years ago, you entered a beauty contest, you finished in third place, you were at 9. 3 years later, you put on 30 pounds, you're in the same beauty contest, and you're still winning because all the other contestants are pregnant. It's you know what I'm saying? It's like beating competition on TV when there really isn't any competition anymore. He's always trying to go for that W, which is what they like to post on social media. They like to post their W's and just ignoring the basic principles that professional wrestling was built around forever. You called AEW a year ago. You said it's a well-funded hobby. I don't know how anybody could argue against that statement, going forward here in 2025.
First of all, it's a bizarro world, the world of Dave Meltzer and the people that defend him or believe in him or whatever. Look, Dave, let's give credit where credit is due. I think when it comes to someone, if I wanted to sit down and talk about the history of the business, correct, I could not think of anybody that I would even spend time thinking about speaking to until I had a chance to sit down with Meltzer. That is his lane. He is that guy. I don't think he's going to write my obituary, but if he did, it would be a good one because he's good at that too.
Right.
Okay, those are the two things he's good at. Unfortunately for Dave, he thinks because he is a mark, he hates, that's why I'm saying it, but it's true. He thinks he's convinced himself of a reality that doesn't exist, that being that because he's been a wrestling fan and he knows the history of wrestling and he knows what he likes, therefore he knows what's best for the wrestling business. That's been his thing since 1987 when I first started paying attention to this. He thinks he's more knowledgeable than he is. And unfortunately for Dave, he has, through his relationship with Tony Khan, he now has direct influence. Now, I don't know how much. I'm not going to suggest I do. And I don't listen to rumors really. But I believe, for no good reason other than I believe it, that there is a pretty consistent dialogue between Tony and Dave. And perhaps maybe less so now, but certainly early on through the relationship with the Bucks and everybody else. And I think that Dave and Tony probably have in common a certain taste when it comes to wrestling. They both like the high flying, very athletic, very dynamic styles
and Japanese style.
Well, yeah, that's been real apparent lately for the last 2 years. I say lately, but they have that in common. And Dave has a lot of influence, and Tony's convinced that Dave knows what he's talking about, and Dave is convinced that Tony's like the smartest guy in the world. And together, these two guys have whether it's literally or figuratively, kind of joined at the hip and have created this thing called AEW. And it sucks. It's horrible. And there's nothing you can look at in terms of AEW and point to it and say, well, yeah, that's an indication that maybe they're figuring it out. I mean, they're circling the toilet bowl each and every week. And the number of unforced errors and uninterrupted chains of bad decisions is almost like, are they trying? Are they trolling us all? Like, is this a big joke? Are they convincing us that they believe it's really that good? Or do they really believe it? I don't know anymore, man. I have a hard time believing that this whole shtick with Dave is not a work, because otherwise I can't convince myself that even Dave believes that he writes is real.
You know what's the problem with Tony and the sickos and all of these guys is that they're oblivious to their own obliviousness. Does that make sense?
Well, and I use this phrase a lot because it applies in a lot of ways, but they don't know what they don't know. Dave Meltzer knows nothing about producing a television show. He knows nothing about attracting and holding and building an audience, the methodology, the art that goes into it. He knows nothing about it. He can read an article in Variety magazine or TV Insider and memorize it and use it in a conversation to make people think he knows what he's talking about, which is typically what he does, almost all the time what he does once he gets out of his lane. But he has no clue, and neither does Tony.
No.
You know, you hear him talk about demographics, demos. And look, if you're in the advertising business, you're absolutely right, man. Demos, it all begins and it all ends. It lives or it dies by the demo. No question. But that's just one piece of the puzzle. There are other pieces of the puzzle, to Disco's point earlier. You need the masses in order to sell merchandise, to sell tickets, to buy pay-per-views. And it's not all 18 to 34-year-olds that are doing that. In fact, if you look at AEW's own demos, they're outside of their own demos.
Half the wrestling audience is above 52 years old today.
So, yeah, in their case, if half of your wrestling audience is outside of the demo, and you're a guy who studies the business, the wrestling business, and you don't realize that if half your audience is older than 18 to 34 and you're losing them hand over fist, you got a problem. But Dave studies, so maybe he'll get to that chapter soon.
Yeah, well, the very arrogant way he tries to like deflect these basic criticisms that people have is what bothers me, because like he's trying to tell everybody now that we have to apologize because they got a $170 million deal and supposedly they're going to be profitable going forward. All right, just for one sentence. But my basic thing is like, well, dude, WWE just got 787.
It's not even that. Nobody can compare. Even he can't compare WWE to AEW in any way, shape, or form. Right. But here's the deal with Dave. You asked earlier, why does Dave do this? Why does Dave do that? Why does he keep ignoring all these other, data points? It's because it's all he's got. And it's the TV deal is all he's got. He can't talk about any other aspect of the business without being honest about it. So he talks about something. He talks about a mirage. That deal, and again, I don't know anything. I've never seen the contract, but I'm 100% confident in what I'm about to say. Either Dave Meltzer has seen the contract and AEW's financials, and if he has, he knows within that contract there are thresholds. AEW will have to reach these certain. Now, again, I don't know this is a fact, but I've not seen too many multi-year TV deals that don't have thresholds, performance thresholds in them. Maybe Tony's such a good salesman, he got around that. But let me finish. Thresholds is the number one issue. Yeah, it's a $170 million contract, a face value. Pay close attention to people that are listening to this. If you're an aggregator, I call you a parasite. But if you're going to aggregate this, do it in context and the whole thing, please. Thank you very much. I posit that $170 million deal that is the only thing that Dave can stand on is an illusion, because I don't think it's an all-cash deal. I believe that there is a significant portion of that $170 million that has nothing to do with cash. It has everything to do with the cash value of a certain amount of commercial inventory that Turner is providing to AEW. It's called, in contractual terms, in kind, in quotes, in kind value. What that does, and by the way, that commercial inventory that they're getting is called remnant inventory. It's inventory that they haven't sold and they can't sell. So what do? They say, I'll tell you what, Joe Blow, I know you want $100 million a year for a license fee. I'll give you $50 million in cash, but I'll give you $65 million worth of promotion. That making the whole total deal, whatever the total is. So again, no inside information. I just have enough confidence to suggest that a large portion of that $170 million deal isn't even real. It's significantly less than that. But now, Dave either knows that, and I've challenged him online, and I'll challenge you right here, Dave. If you have seen this contract, I want you to tell me either there is in-kind promotional value, or tell me that I'm absolutely wrong because you've seen the contract. Can't have it both ways. You either know what you're talking about or you don't. We'll see.
Could it be possible that for Tony not to look bad, to have put in some money into that? Like say, here's 50 million, just say this is part of the deal?
I wouldn't buy that just because it's creative, but it's a publicly held company and they generally don't like too much creative. And besides that, there's no real benefit to Turner. And this is the one thing that confuses me. There's no real benefit to Turner for that $170 million a year, or $185 million, whatever it is, whatever the number is, because I don't believe the number's real anyway. I believe it's partially real and partially in-kind value. Typically, networks, especially one that's broke. I mean, Turner woke up 6 months ago to a $9 billion loss.
Yeah.
I mean, this is not a company that's riding high. They're spinning off major divisions because they're poor. They're so poorly performing. So why would TBS want it publicized that there is that how much they paid in a license fee? That's the other part that's weird to me. And then perhaps it was negotiated because it was important to Tony. Tony's like Dixie Carter in the sense that the most important thing was the perception. As long as the perception was that you were growing and things were getting better, the reality didn't matter.
Let me just tell you this. I think that what's happened with AEW, Eric, is, you know how you said that Tony and Dave had the same taste, like the high flying, the Japanese style, all that. They found a niche that likes that also, but it's only a niche. And you're not going to make money with a niche. You got to go to the masses. And so the other thing that caught me off guard was, why did TNT give them almost double if the ratings were going down as they were negotiating? I mean, let's think about this. When Punk was there, they were doing $1 million. Now they're doing like 600,000. I mean, could there conceivably be a point where TNT says, we're going to move to another day because you're not performing as well, or as long as they're the number one cable show on their, on Wednesdays, they'll continue to have that time slot?
I think that's a good question. And look, there obviously is some value to Turner. And this is the part where you really, and the only reason I hesitate is for me to speak on this at all. I have to be clear that I don't have any inside information. And by that, I mean, from Turner, I don't know Turner well enough anymore to know what they're doing to try to right the ship. Clearly, they've got issues. Clearly, they don't have a lot of money to pay for first run programming. Their budgets have got to be exceptionally low because financially, the network is hemorrhaging cash. When you're thinking about spinning off your news division, which is the most profitable division in an entertainment company, at least historically it has been, you've got problems because so many of the other aspects of your business are losing money or barely breaking even. So there is some value to that 500 or 600,000 people that show up every week on Wednesday, whether they're the number one show that night or the number 3 show that night. You've got to have bodies showing up, or otherwise you just look like an abandoned piece of property and you have no value outside of to the outside world. You're just a shell of a former network. So there is value, which is probably why they kept it, because it does consistently rate above a lot of the other types of programming they have. The problem is that's an illusion, because that value of creating the perception and the reality to a degree that people are showing up at your network, that keeps you alive. It keeps you in the game. You can talk to advertisers. You can talk to producers and maybe attract some better quality programming because you're not dead yet. So there's a value to having bodies show up. The flip side of that is those bodies aren't worth anything. Advertisers are not buying that show. If they are, they're buying it for Kmart blue light special rates. It is not a financially successful franchise for the network, but it has value in terms of perception. And that's not an unusual strategy at all for a network. Networks will sometimes, and we're seeing it now in streaming. Netflix has been doing it now for 8 years. They're spending so much money investing in content because they want to be perceived as the first place to go if you're looking for streaming content. So you've got to have a lot of it. You've got to spend money. Even if some of those shows or a lot of those shows are not even popular or making money, you're still buying them because you need the masses in order to build. So I think Turner's probably looking at AEW going, well, there's, like 500,000 people show up and, that's more than the seventh rerun of some 80s sitcom got. So let's do that. The problem is they're probably making more of the 7-year-old sitcom in terms of ad dollars than they are at a first run programming from AEW.
Yeah, because the show that's their lead in The Big Bang, they always have the highest rating in the first segment because they're getting the lead in from. And how
they're getting over.
How old is The Big Bang? 8 years?
Yeah, in fact, if you guys want to have some fun and entertain yourself, like if you're on a plane, you know what to do, and the person next to you is kind of boring, just sit down, take one of the shows from WrestleNomics where they break down the quarter hours.
Oh, we do. We do that every week.
Take out Big Bang and then average what the rest of the quarters equal.
It's like an Olympic ski slope every week,
Yo, what's up? I just want to thank you guys for watching this clip. Don't forget to hit the like button, leave a comment, and subscribe, and join our YouTube membership for hours and hours of exclusive, unedited, uncensored content. And being a member will help you get involved in our upcoming live streams. Thank you for your support. Thank you for riding with us. I know you got a lot of other podcast choices, be it wrestling or other ones. And thank you for picking us. Boom.